The men gathered atop the cliffside, checking their ropes for frays, which would mean their death. Each of them had known a person who fell. Stanish, the man in charge, had himself fallen and survived. He told the tale with a broken jaw atop a useless right leg. Frowning at the sorry excuse for a crew, he gave a command through a twisted aperture of mouth. "You're up!" He spat at the youngest of them. The boy looked as though he were swallowing vomit. He gathered the sticks, the jar of honey, and the brush. An older recruit tied the rope to his loose harness. The boy prayed fragments of prayers. "You'll do great! Nothing to be afraid about!" Stanish laughed. A line of slobber on his chin caught the morning light. "Descend!" The men laughed and kicked the boy off the cliff. He free fell but 8 feet before the line caught him. The boy almost dropped the honey pot. He did lose the brush. Stanish would take it out of his pay. "Hup!" the boy whooped. He soiled himself lightly as the line went slack, lowering him quivering inches lower past gray, angular sandstone. In the boy's pouch were 20 slender cuts of dry cedar branches. He watched them rattle with nauseous focus as he descended 10 feet, 20, then 30. Yes, now he could hear it. The infant mews of the Chimera chicks. Below him, a 6-foot-wide circle of corn husks, shredded magazines, and saliva spiraled. 4 more feet. 3 more. What would they look like as hatchlings? He had never seen them so fresh. "Hup, hup!" But the men didn't hear. He shouted louder as the nest slipped above his head. "Hup, hup!" The rope went taut with a jerk. The nest was 3 feet above him. Gritting his eyes, he pulled himself up on the rope till he could struggle over the edge of the outcrop. He swung a leg over, then clawed his way to safety. Panting there, he saw them. No one said the eyes would be so human. The Chimera chicks were the size and shape of a half-flat basketball. 6 pudgy fleshen bundles blinked their oozing yellow eyes at the boy. He figured they'd have feathers or fine hair, but it was skin. Depending on their place in the lineage, the boy knew some chimeras could be mostly bird. These, disgustingly, were more human. Hanging ears, red-lidded eyes, beaks rimmed with chapped lips. Purple organs churned beneath their transparent skin. A brave one approached the boy as he unscrewed the honey pot. The pathetic thing hiccuped forward on avian twigs of legs, while the fingers spread like a courtier asking to dance. The boy snorted. They smelled like shit. The kid punted the half-human basketball from the nest. 10 seconds later, he heard the hilarious squish of the body splattering upon rocks. The boy went about disposing the other chicks. One by one, he picked them up and chucked them like watermelons off the side. Splat! Squish, splat! Squish! The last chick bit the boy's ankle while he wasn't looking, piercing flesh with incisors growing within a bony Pinocchio beak. The ankle stung so bad he wanted to chuck this last offender too, but Mama needed a reason to return. "You're fucking lucky," he spat at the baby. He gathered the first stick, opened the jar, and cupped honey in his palm. He coated the thin rod with sticky residue, then stuck it upright into the nest. A stick and a scoop at a time, the boy built a gooey cage around the chick, which by now was making that inhuman screech with new panic. "Hup, hup, hup!" the boy shouted. The slack was pulled taut, and he ascended to the heavens. The mother chimera was mostly bird, except for her fingers, teeth, and ears. Her ears were human, but larger to match her size, knotted with cartilage and transparent save for chugging branches of red capillaries. Her mate called her Red Ears. She was an early specimen in the chimeric lineage. Her mother was an eagle. This was Mom's time to hunt, and she made several kills: an adult rabbit, a baby calf, and just now, a human toddler. Her talons shredded the wailing things back to ribbons. Its parents were just over the ridge, calling in their senseless tongue. It was then she heard the signature wail of her chick 2 miles away. The mother commanded, and avian shut up to the whining creature. One of her chicks was alone. Where were the others? Her blood chilled. She left the toddler maimed, but uneaten. Red Ears would not have recognized her nest if she hadn't heard the chick. Best she could reckon, a strange dripping tree had grown in her nest, and its gooey branches had snared her child. She cried, and scattered the sticks with her wings. But the sticks didn't scatter. Instead, they stuck to her wings, all 20 of them. She flapped, and the sticks prodded her flank, weighed her arms down. If she moved, they stuck her vicious in her wing pits. She tried to pick them away with her beak and incisors, but each tug only ripped out feathers. The mother joined the chick in its panic. When Stanish relayed down the cliff, Red Ears was too exhausted to fight. She spat. The grizzled man ignored the warning, slipped a black sack over her head, forced her inside a crate, and walked her to the edge of the nest, all in 10 seconds flat. Stanish croaked, and the rope went taut. Red Ears screamed for her chick, and the chick screamed back. The man kicked at the nest, and Red Ears heard the chick's cries go distant, falling away. Splat. She no longer wondered where her other children went. Women spoke all around Red Ears in the dark, which lasted for 20 hours. Big fucker, ain't he? Biggest I ever saw, and I seen eagles. Seen bigger. Shut your fuck mouth. Gonna be a killer. You can see it in her talons. I can see it in her ears. The women cackled. Red Ears knew the sounds of humans, but not their meaning. She thought they were threatening her. She did not know about bullshitting. The women had been doing it for hours, all while tugging at Red Ears' feathers and scrubbing her with hot water. Each time she shook, she felt fewer of the snaring branches. Were they helping her? The fiber sack hissed over her scalp as Stanish ripped it from Red Ears' head. Her diamond pupils shrank to pinpricks at the sudden light. Heave! She roared. Stanish thwapped her on the beak with a magazine. Shut up! Red Ears knew how to kill, and it was her desire now. Her beak opened and air sputtered against her ribbed, hard palate. The man hit her again, and this time other hands, hidden from sight, wrapped around Red Ears' beak and forced it shut. Rev her up! Frayed Velcro straps hugged her toothed beak. She wished to hiss again, but could only spray from her nose slits. Her talons raised, but her feet too were bound. She fell in the dirt. The women laughed. Right, let's see how feisty she is in a week. When Stanish returned for her, Red Ears could not move. It had been days since she ate, and the spirit had left her, the spirit to fight, to run, to cry. She was indoors, she knew that much. Save for cracks between planks of rotted roofing, there was no light. There had been horses here once. She could smell their ghosts. Weak as her mind was, Red Ears missed her children. Those 6 babes were the fullness she missed in her bird uterus. She missed their warm life, their pathetic cries. She wondered where her husband might be, for she missed his warmth as well. "Up!" Stanish spat at her. She did not move. "All right, then." Next she knew, oily hands wrapped about her forewings and dragged her through the dirt. The man smelled like feces, but beneath that was something tantalizing. From a sack on his belt there was blood. Empty and dry as she was, her mouth watered. "Looky here, freak!" The man dribbled from his slanted mouth. He walked a good 10 paces away from the crumpled bird. He picked up a bright red cape from the dirt and spread it between his arms. "Looky, looky!" And he took a wet morsel of meat from the sack. He wrapped it in the cape. He set it on the ground and walked away. Then, dirty fingers in his mouth, he made a shrill whistle. Red Ears smelled the meat and followed her nose. She waited for the man to object, but he stood aside as she took slow steps to the cape. It was torn up with claw marks. She added more. A talon scored the belly of the fabric, rattling it with fervor. She could nearly taste the blood, and she shook the fabric with her beak. The meat fell clear, and she ate it with a desperate chomp. The man clapped now. He tossed her another chunk of meat, and she ate it off the dirt. "Right," the man said, gathering up the red cloak and removing a piece of meat from the pouch. "Again." A month later, Red Ears couldn't remember the sounds of her chicks, but she wanted to. She heard her dead children mewling in the barn when the wind blew, chirping when the foundation settled, crying when the planks warped. The one noise she did not forget was the splat of her last child. In dreams, she heard that burst of death and refrain. Splat, 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 splat. But now, somehow, she was outside. Red Ears hadn't felt the rain for a seeming eternity. She missed the cold. It awoke memories. Somewhere distant, she thought she heard her chicks. She flapped her wings, ready to go. Stanish shrieked through fingers in his mouth. Thoughts interrupted, Red Ears waddled to the man, eager for a treat. He tossed a bit in the air, which she caught. Stanish was not alone this time. There was a team of men in black robes and one woman in audience. The lady was hairless from scalp to forearms, and her skin blistered even in the shade. "You may begin," she said. Stanish approached Red Ears and slipped a black sack over her head. Meanwhile, an assistant took a red cloak, fastened it over a squealing pig, and spanked the creature hard. Off the pig ran. Red Ears listened for its movements, but lost track quickly under the coos of the man with the slanted mouth. "Just you wait, girl." At the assistant's signal, Stanish ripped the sack from Red Ear's skull, and she was airborne, powerful wings flapping their full 6-foot span. She rose 40, 50, 70 feet into the sky and circled on a looping current of hot air. She hadn't flown this high in months, and the height frightened her. Then the command came again. Screwing her eyes left and right, it was a minute before they trained on a distant flash of flapping red. Her mouth watered. A powerful spasm of her forearms, human-like fingers tightened into white fists, and she dove. The speck of red grew into a dot, then an orb, then a quaking mass. Her talons spread wide, and in a second found purchase. The pig squealed as talons pierced into its meaty back and wailed as it left the ground, flying higher as the talons tore and the beak ripped and the incisors crunched. The audience clapped, and the hairless woman smiled a broad rictus. It was raining outside the chimerary, which bustled with defeated chimeras lashed by the foot to perches lining the dome by the dozen. Below, Stanish whistled a nameless tune and marked his final list, explaining his rationale to the assistant. No, see? He pointed at a map. We need more. It's not an outpost, it is a camp. He grinned. Red Ears was perched in a hungry delirium when the assistant unfastened her restraint. Up and at it, the boy coughed. From the chimerary, 24 part human, part bird soared into the frigid air, the night pale blue with the coming dawn. Some were half bird, others were 3/4. Some barely bird at all, naked, chubby adults with leathery wings of stretched arm fat, skin taut over beaks, but no genitals save a cloaca. Red Ears had never been with a flock before, and found her flight dictated by the mob of them, dodging and following and rising with the pack. Then the call came. The flock grew feverish, and I scoured the low, distant plains. Red Ears forgot the thrush of wind beneath her, the spray of rain in the air. She knew only the game. Below, obscured by hazy weather, she saw a flash of red fabric. She called, and then others saw it too. The flock dove for the red target. The lower they fell, more red cloaks appeared. 100 or more victims, and among them, suppressed avian bodies. On the ground, the men, women, and children of the camp heard a tornado's violent screech from the descending chimeric missiles. Women ran from their cooking fires. Children screamed in the dirt. Most of the men abandoned the birds they had strapped to logs and fallen pillars. Some, however, kept at it. One such man was lost in his tireless deed, tomato-faced and dripping sweat. He wore a shirt but no pants as he made one-sided love to a drugged eagle. The beast suffered the humping with numb eyes and avian despair. The man was aware of the attack only once talons stabbed beneath his collarbones and lifted him off the ground. He screamed in agony as the chimera pecked apart his face. Red Ears chased one red cloak, but had her prize stolen by a mostly pelican chimera with bushy eyebrows and white plumage streaked with red. All around her was cacophony, the screams of airborne bodies, the splat of meaty chunks, the rip of gristle. Red Ears flapped above the fray for a better view. There, by the edge of the forest, a red cloak. The man wearing it had his pants around his ankles, penis spanking his thighs with each frantic step. Hey! She screamed and flew for his cloak. She punctured his back and slammed him to the ground, ripping through his back to expose kidneys. He wailed, slobbered, and shattered molars under his snapping jaw. Red Ears tired of his noise and rolled him over to finish her grisly deed. Then she saw his face. There was something familiar about the man. Looking into his panicked eyes stirred a distant, forgotten image, and a warmth spread between her ribs.
Red Ears!
The dying man whispered.
Sweetheart!
She wanted his warmth, his love, but not as much as she wanted the treat.
Heap!
She called. She slashed her talons to hook into his chest and beat her wings, so together they rose. 15 feet, 30, 50. The man was crying. He never met the chicks he sired. He never would. 70 feet, 80 feet, 90 feet. Red Ears dropped the man from 4 stories, and he plummeted to the earth and landed with a crunching, Splat! As he lay in his distant gore, the sound of his splatter awoke Red Ear's faded memories of her lost babes. Half-bird though she was, the human half cried salty tears. The tears cleared at once. Red Ears pushed the image of her young away. She forgot the warmth of her once-alive husband. The other chimeras took to the sky, flying home for a reward of meat chunklets, the dank chimerary glistening in brown and white excrement. She flew home dim and empty, save for one sound which rang through her skull. Splat, 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 splat.